Hey guys, welcome back to my channel today. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my thoughts on the newest Too Faced eyeshadow palette. This is the Natural Less palette, and as you can see, it is super beautiful with the packaging. This is also a larger palette from them. I did create this eye look today using this palette here, and I do have some first impression thoughts when it comes to pros and cons of this palette right away. I will definitely do a follow-up video once I've tested out all 30 shades in this puppy, but if you want to know my first impression thoughts, see some swatches as well as tutorial on this look, then just keep watching. First of all, let's talk about the outer packaging of this one. This one is beautiful. It is definitely a little bit kind of tarnished looking. I think that's the word to look for. So you can't see it, the lights are not going to pick it up, but there is some tarnish effect on this palette here. And it does have some texture to it with like the flowers and the bird. So it does kind of pop out a little bit on the palette here. When you open it up, you will see a mirror, and it's not the full size of the lid, but it is a large enough size, so I do love that. Then you have the 30 shades themselves. Out of all the shades in the palette here, 15 of them are matte and 15 are shimmer. So we do have an exact 50-50 when it comes to shimmer shades versus no shimmer shades. And as you can see from the swatches, we do have a lot of really natural, pretty colors in here. There are a lot of nice shimmers that I do think will really complement a lot of eye looks, and we do have a lot of mattes to play with, some being some base colors like I mentioned, so you can really start a look very easily, as well as we have that matte black as well to really smoke out if you're looking for that type of look. When it comes to how these shades swatched, I do think that some of these mattes are a little bit drier. So when I was swatching them, I found that the lighter mattes really were on the drier end versus some of the deeper mattes. I do think as a result of this, you're going to have to build up the lighter mattes a little bit more on the lid because they're not going to spread as far. So that was my first impression just based on swatches alone. But of course, I will follow up with the shades I haven't tested once I get through all 30 shades of fully testing this one out. Now for my eye look today, I wanted to keep it pretty natural with a little bit of some sultry edge kind of on the edge of the eye there. So first I started off with a very light matte, and the shade that I used was Afternoon Delight. I applied this with my Smith 247 brush. I wanted it to be definitely diffused, especially along the edges there. And I did find this one to have to be built up on the lid a little bit more. This one I do think is a little bit more of a drier matte formula than I'm typically used to from Too Faced. Next, I went in with my Sigma E25 and I picked up the Such a Tease shade. I wanted to get a little bit of that sultry look on the outer edge of the eye, but what I found was that once I applied that shade to the eye, it didn't translate as that much of a difference in my look. So I do think that this is going to be probably the biggest struggle with this palette, is that there are 30 shades in here, but in my opinion, they probably could have at least brought 10 of these out because there's quite a few that I think would translate very similarly on the lid. So I don't think you necessarily need all 30 shades. So if I had a critique for Too Faced, it would be that this could probably be done just as effectively and with excellence with just 20 shades because the difference between some of these shades is incredibly slight. So in order to deepen that outer edge a little bit more, I picked up another shade. The shade that I used this time was Spank Me, and I used my Luxie 229. Lastly, I used a fingertip application to add some sparkle to the middle of the lid. This is a go-to type style of look I've been doing recently, and I've been really loving it. So the shade that I picked up with my finger is Flirty Pop. This is a shade that just worked with the other two beautifully. I thought it really tied the look together, and I do think that for my makeup today, as well as the outfit I'm wearing today, everything is really cohesive and beautiful. When I applied that shimmer shade, I did get a touch of fallout on my cheeks, but nothing crazy. So I do think that this is a palette you can definitely do after your base if you want to apply your foundation first, or you can do it before your base. It is just my preference to do all my eyeshadow first before my base, so that's what I did, but you can definitely do both because the fallout doesn't seem to be really there at all with most of the shades, with the exception of some of those glitter shades that are going to be a little bit heavier. Now, as I said before, when it comes to this color story, I think it's beautiful, but I do think that this could have been done with 20 shades versus 30. That is just my opinion, of course, but I do think when you look at these, you can see quite a few shades that are pretty close to each other. So that is the first observation that I have. That first column that you can see with all of the lighter shades, there's a few that they could easily have canceled, right? Like you can definitely tell that. And I do think some of the taupes especially could have been gone. So again, that is just a minor detail. This isn't going to be something that I'm going to say don't buy the palette for, but it's just something that I kind of thought to myself, like, yeah, there's a lot of redundancy in this palette. Now this palette is available as of today in Sephora stores. That's how I picked mine up. It's also available online and it does retail for 59 American dollars or 69 Canadian dollars. I've seen it online at Ulta, at Nordstrom, and at Too Faced website as well. So there's a lot of different retailers to pick this one up. It is very widely available for you guys. All in all, I think this palette is really, really cute. I do think that this formula is probably not as good as the tin eyeshadow palettes that I have. So the Gingerbread Spice palette I do think has some better consistency as a whole, just with the mattes in particular, but I don't necessarily think that this formula is bad at all. I just think that, like I said, there's some weaknesses, and with the color story, there's some weaknesses, but I think this is a very user-friendly palette. I think it's beautiful for those natural looks for sure. With the shade differentiation, you're going to want to choose some lighter shades and then contrast them with the deepest shades in this palette. You're not going to get a lot of difference between some of them, so just keep that in mind as well. I have yet to play with that blue there, but when I swatched it, it looked to be a fairly lighter blue in pigment. So I do think it's going to be much more catered to beginners versus a heavy blue pigment that might be potentially too much for somebody that's not as skilled. Are these shades that you have in your collection already? Absolutely. So it just depends on how often you use shades like this and if you can justify another palette purchase, but just know that this is a good Too Faced formula, but I would say not as good as their tin palettes. So just keep that in mind when it comes to making this decision. As for me, these types of palettes seem to just attract me right away because I love the natural looks that it can bring. So this one I'm excited to have in my collection. And of course, I will check back in a hits and misses video in the future when I have tested out all 30 shades. Anyways, guys, that is it for this video today. Let me know down below, what are your thoughts on this palette? Do you want it? Do you have the Natural Love palette? Do you love that one? I would love to know all your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up so I know. And until my next video, guys, take care. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.
You and me, everything that we've been through has made us strong. You won't believe we've had our gray, but somewhere there's a light inside of us. It shows the way.